at Chisel. Unexpectedly moved into the big room, so that's why I look terrified today. I'm here to talk about one of my modules that I use to help make me a bit lazy. Summary really is sanity checking your DBIx schema classes with as little effort as possible. Or as I like to call it, continuing my quest in being really, really lazy. It's my favourite of the three virtues, so I use it as often as possible. So, long time ago I remember the non-lazy way of testing my database classes. Lots of can methods, across the columns, across everything like that. It gets a bit boring after a while. Sorry, I don't have it on the screen in front of me, which is why I keep facing behind me. Then you expand it a little bit and you think, well, the methods exist. Do they really run as well? So you then start copy-pasting lots of try methods, eval methods all over the place. Around then, laziness kicks in a little bit because you start thinking about, well, result sets, the custom methods that I wrote all my classes. Do they work? Are they there? Who knows? So then you decide to test something new. You decide to test something new. You've got 15, 20 test files already scattered across the place. You have to go through them all, edit them manually. It's a bit like the fun times when you decide to rename your base package class. It's just a pointless waste of time. And yeah, I don't like editing more than 0 test files. Well, I'll edit them once, and once is more than enough. So I threw together some time ago a module, the name's up there, fairly easy to remember, to factor out the laziness that I wanted. This is an example. So this is stolen from the pod. There's 3 simple steps to kind of testing your test files. First step, tell it what you're testing. Tell it the things you're expecting it to test for. I've broken it up into columns. Hopefully the database has columns in it. You have relations between the tables. Then you've got generally result set methods and the custom methods that you throw into files. They're broken out a little bit because it's easier to test them as the different things that they are without having to do too much detective work. That's the really difficult bit, just run the tests at the end. I didn't throw up example of the output, it's just lots of OKs and fails. So, what does the module give you? As I mentioned before, I was bored of typing lots and lots of can type tests. So you get can tests for everything that you've declared as a method you're interested in. I might rename the last 2 to something more useful, but I'm probably the only person using it, so it's a bit bad. You also get a long list of things that I can't remember. So it tests calling columns, calling relationships. It doesn't call custom methods because you can't guarantee they're not going to do evil things to your data. That's a different problem that I didn't want to deal with just yet. It does further tests of your relationships, so you define your relationships with your self-IDs and your foreign IDs. It does a bit of poking to make sure that they're actually valid. We discovered some fun a few months ago with proxying relationships through. Don't generally think about those when you start using them day to day. We threw up some extra testing for that. And generally it'll tell you if you define a relationship that doesn't make sense or doesn't exist. You don't get any functional testing. This is really just a sanity test of things you thought were in your database are still there and still behave. Business logic and all that sort of stuff doesn't belong in the test DBIx schema area. Yeah. These are my personal list of what I think are the benefits. Is you've moved away from lots and lots of test files. You write them once, you maybe edit them when you add new columns. You've got one place that does all the testing for you. Lots and lots of sanity checking. When we grew it this year, we found problems we didn't even realise we had in our schema declarations. Sometimes nasty people do delete database columns. They don't always own up to it, but with this you can find out quite quickly that it's gone away, and then you can at least find out if you really wanted it. And yeah, the normal benefits of having stuff in a common module is if I upgrade the module, I get the new shiny or the new fixes without having to touch tons and tons of test files. Using it for the last couple of years, we've kind of settled down into just some recommendations if you do explore this. It's written in a way that you test one class per file, so there's no, don't list all 26 module classes in the same file and expect it to run through. You might be able to do that, it's just nicer to work with. Test aggregate, our tests, because each script loads the schema for you at the beginning and then does the tests. Schema loading isn't always very fast, so we run the scripts all under test aggregate. You only get that hit once, it's a lot faster. I think that's still alive, if not, we're in trouble. And just another level of laziness, the schema connection is something that's useful to factor out because it only varies generally by the table name, so another level of laziness. I tried to make it as simple as possible, but in your own situation, you should be able to pull it out further. In the real world, kind of came out of my head the end of 2008 for a large project, Net-Porter. We've been using it for the production code since 2009. Thanks to one of the guys at work, it's had a lot of improvements. It tests a lot more than it used to. The relationships, some of the columns, I'll cover them in a minute, but overall, I find it to be very, very useful. You've just got an extra level of confidence in your schema setup. You don't have to fret so much about that, and you can just plod along with writing more interesting business logic-based testing of your application, or even writing the application itself. A wish list of things I'd like to see maybe in the future. There's some areas. At the moment, if you define a relationship, it checks it goes one way. Some of the relationships, it might be useful to have errors or warnings if there isn't a relationship coming back the other way. So the belongs to's and the might haves, sometimes it's useful to know. I think we took out some relationships because of the has many testing, revealed that we didn't actually have that relationship anymore. One suggestion from a guy at work was not only does it test that you still have the columns you think you've got, it starts probing the database for columns it's got that you don't know about or haven't told it about. Personally, I'm not sure about the usefulness of that. Sometimes you want to sneak a few columns in that your schema doesn't care about. Another suggestion from someone at work, when you're using schema loaders to generate your template files for your fresh database, if you've got this module installed, it might be useful for it to throw out the template tests for test DBIx schema. Then there's an extra layer of laziness, so you don't have to write the initial scripts yourself. very short talk, because I probably talk far too quickly, but that's the gist of the module. I'll take questions if there are any. Yes. Okay, so no, it doesn't check. It doesn't check against the definitions of the columns. So it doesn't check that anything like that matches. So maybe that's something that could go onto the wish list or future enhancements. A lot of times, I guess, unless you're using Schema Loader, a lot of people just take a lazy approach and just say, I've got these columns, which tends to be the case where we are. So we've not really hit the use case of, is this column also what it claims to be? But could enhance it to do that. Anyone else?
So you check a lot of, may I go to Microsoft? Hope it's on. So you check a lot of whether the schema differs from the actual database. You don't aim at testing databases that were deployed by DBIc in the first place, is that right?
That's correct. Just testing, testing the database that's there.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.